Hi, this is Benja with Hungry for Comics. I'm here with Tom.
Hi.
Hi, Tom. Um, and we're here today with a beginner's guide to manga for adult readers. I didn't really get into manga until I was in my mid 40s. And I think if you didn't grow up reading manga, starting to read manga as an adult is a slightly different thing. I think for example, like, when I was a kid growing up in the 80s, like, I love Transformers comics. Like, I will still read the odd Transformers comic here and there. I grew up reading it, it's something I love. So I think similarly, people who grew up reading manga in their childhood, there's a lot of stuff they're still going to be into later in life that they may recommend to you as a newbie adult reader that is just not going to be in your wheelhouse at all. And this is an experience I've had, like people recommending a lot of stuff, and I've been reading it. I'm like, yeah, if I was 15 I would like this, but I'm 47, so this isn't going to work for me. So hopefully I'm going to save you a lot of time and give some recommendations. If you're an adult, um, define that however you wish, and you want to get into reading manga. I guess the first question is, should you read manga? And the answer is yes. Um, there are elements to Japanese storytelling that are borderline non-existent in Western comics. More of that we're going to go through as we look at some different books. Um, I think another reason people are wary of getting into manga later in life is they're thinking, how many volumes? Everything seems to have hundreds of volumes. I don't know where to begin. You'll go into a comic book store and you'll see there's like thousands of different manga. Where do you even begin? Hopefully, we're going to help you with that today and give you some good examples from many different genres. The starting point, and I think if there's one thing you take away from this video, just read Full Metal Alchemist. Have you read Full Metal Alchemist, Tom?
No, I've watched it all.
You've watched it all?
I watched all the Full Metal Alchemist, and then I started watching Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, which is supposed to be more aligned with
Yes,
manga.
there is a Netflix adaptation called Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood that is a pretty much a one-to-one recreation of the manga. Um, for me, I think Full Metal Alchemist is the quintessential great manga. Everything that is great about manga is exemplified in this series. It's available in these 9 3-in-1 paperbacks. May seem like a lot, but once you get into the story, I mean, I was getting like one volume every few weeks or like every month. They're not that pricey. I don't really want to explain the story too much. Uh, just read it. I mean, I know 10-year-olds who've loved reading this. I know 60-year-olds who've loved reading this. Um, it starts off, seems kind of fairly simple from the beginning. It starts off with a fairly simple storyline, but as the story continues, it starts to build out this world and develop. The character development is second to none. Um, it really is, regardless of it being a manga. It's a fantastic piece of storytelling. Um, it's way up there with some of the greatest stories ever written, in my opinion. It's absolutely brilliant, and there's an element that's very strong in this that I think is something you don't often find in Western media that you do find a lot in Japanese stuff, is that very few of the characters are wholly good or wholly bad. Like, a lot of Japanese storytelling is much more comfortable existing in the grey, where things aren't so black and white. And this story is an excellent example of that. It's got fantasy elements, it's got sci-fi elements, but it's also, there's a lot of themes of like political corruption and how power corrupts. It becomes increasingly complex as the story goes on, building out the world, a lot of history to all the different characters. It has this amazing ability to turn from like slapstick comedy to really, really dark anti-war commentary on a dime. Uh, It's brilliant. It's funny. It's emotional. It's sad. It's exciting. Some of the action sequences in it are absolutely brilliant. I cannot recommend this enough. Whatever preconceptions you may have about what kind of stories you would like, just read Full Metal Alchemist. Okay, my second recommendation for beginner adult readers is Anything and Everything by Taiyo Matsumoto. One criticism of manga I hear is that it all looks the same, which is firstly, you can say the same thing about mainstream Western comics. They all have that photorealistic, too many lighting effects kind of look like. And I think once you explore manga, you'll find that it's peppered with these auteurs who have a completely unique style. And for me, Taiyo Matsumoto is my favourite manga author overall. And I think he has this style that I would describe as a kind of visual poetry. Like the way he'll use images and words to evoke feelings and emotions that cannot fully be conveyed with images or words. His breakout work that he made in his early 20s, and there's a very successful film of this made as well in animation that is also brilliant, is Tekkon Kinkriet. This is the new edition from Viz that is in the Japanese orientation. Tom.
That's how you pronounce it?
I'm not sure. I think it is.
Always.
Tekkon Kinkriet.
Oh, we always used to call it Tekken Concrete.
Okay, well, I mean, it's
I'm
open
not
to
judging.
interpretation.
You're
There's
the
another
manga
book
person.
we'll come to that there is great debate about how the name is pronounced. So just say it any way you want. So you may recognise his style, possibly because Adult Swim have been ripping off his style for the past 25 years. So this was his first manga, and it's the story. It's kind of set in a sci-fi environment, but not really sci-fi. It's about two street kids in a borough of Tokyo in Japan who are giving the police and the Yakuza a lot of bother and trouble. And it's funny, it's got this real melancholy to it as well, and it has these two main kids, black and white, who are just so endearing. And this is a theme in all of Matsumoto's work. He is so adept at depicting the world through the eyes of children that there's something really special and unique about his work. So I really recommend Tekkon Kinkriet. Some other works of his, Cats of the Louvre. A group of artists were commissioned by the Louvre to spend time there and create graphic fiction works inspired by the Louvre, and this was his contribution. It's about a group of stray cats living in the attic of the Louvre art gallery in Paris. This story is absolutely beautiful, and again, it has there's a real visual poetry to his work, and he has a way, let me try and find it. Yeah, he has a way of closing and opening chapters with these vistas. There'll be a bit of story and then just a moment where you just kind of pause and reflect, and there's something so special about it. He has his art style. Some people may think his art style is kind of a bit scratchy, a bit scrappy. This is a stylistic choice. There's other works of his, specifically there's a kind of sci-fi story he wrote called Number 5, in which he demonstrates that he can pretty much draw in any style he wants. This is the style he chooses to draw in. Cats of the Louvre is a beautiful, really sweet, endearing, magical story. Absolutely brilliant. And one final recommendation is Go-Go Monster, which is about children at a school who can see monsters in the top floor of the school, and as they get older, they find it more difficult to see the monsters. And this book is again just a beautiful expression of how a developing mind experiences and perceives the world around them. And the characters, again, there's so many beautifully endearing characters in this story. Again, you see the way he closes the chapters with these kind of real pauses for reflection. It's just such lovely work. This is a really, really beautiful edition from Viz as well. It's really nice end pages. Don't want to reveal too much. I'd just say if you like kind of slightly more surreal or poetic writing, Matsumoto is a great artist to look into. So Go-Go Monster. He's also written... there's a very famous work of his called Ping Pong, which is about competitive high school ping pong, but it's actually about life, the universe, and everything. There's an anime of that and a movie as well. That's really worth a read. He's done a 6-volume story called Sunny about his real experiences of growing up in an orphanage in Japan. That's amazing. For me, anything and everything by Matsumoto is going to be a great time. Next up, we have the work of Osamu Tezuka, known as the godfather of manga. He created the character Astro Boy and ran a very famous animation studio for many years as well. So very influential in manga and anime and animation the world over in general. But later in his career, he started making a lot of manga for adults, like this amazing post-war drama Ayako, and the one I really want to talk about here is Message to Adolf. Now, you may be aware of, there's a very famous graphic novel from the West by Art Spiegelman called Mouse. A crude way of describing this, it's a 2-volume set, is like, this is the Japanese Mouse. It's about a Jewish Japanese and German Japanese group of friends growing up in Japan but just before the outbreak of World War II, and how their lives go in separate directions and kind of meet up, and their lives are kind of intertwined. It's a very, very potent anti-war story. It was written in the 80s. It is, don't want to spoil too much of it, but there's some incredibly prescient and well thought out points that are made in this story. He has this really beautiful art style as well. He's really a massive innovator in the medium. Such a great story. There's a lot of elements of kind of spy stories and thrillers in this as well. He has an interesting technique where he has actors in his stories. So in most of his adult manga, you'll see the same faces over and over again through different stories, because these are his actors that he casts in the various manga that he writes. The Message to Adolf is brilliant. Ayako is fantastic. I also recommend Dororo, Blackjack, which is not that easy to find these days. I think the first 3 volumes of it are in print. Blackjack is like a series of short stories about, basically, the main character is if James Bond was a surgeon. It's absolutely bonkers, Blackjack. I really recommend it.
There's an anime of Blackjack.
Is there? Oh, nice.
I think
there's 18 volumes of it, but there's only 3 currently in print. And the rest of the volumes go for fortunes online. Message to Adolf is really easily available. It's in print from Vertical Press. Vertical Press published most of Tezuka's adult manga. I cannot recommend it enough, especially Message to Adolf is absolutely brilliant. Okay, let's get into some realism. Now, there's a lot of very well-known samurai stories, samurai ninja historic stories in manga, like Lone Wolf and Cub. There's the currently being printed in English for the first time, Legend of Kamui, which was one of my top 10 releases of last year. And I thought, I just want to boil it down to one. If I had to pick one, it's Vagabond, which is the story of the author of Musashi, the author of the Book of 12 Rings, which is a very famous work about military strategy and the art of war, thing that's similar to the art of war. But boiling it down, this story is about a bunch of guys going around Japan in the Edo period, getting into fights with each other to find out who's the hardest man in Japan.
Hi, Tom here. Fact check, Tom. It's Book of 5 Rings.
Book of 5 Rings. Sorry.
It's all right.
The Book of 12 Rings, is that from... Oh, no, that's...
Lord of the Rings.
No, that's from Shang-Chi and Marvel. Anyway, Vagabond is beautiful, it's violent, it's poetic, it's a stunning work of art. It's really I've not read anything like Vagabond. It's absolutely brilliant.
This is the only one so far that I've read.
Right. There are 12 of these 3-in-1 volumes, which may seem like a lot, but I mean, I read this, I got one of these a month and read it over a year. It's quite, it's not a light read, it's not particularly bingeable either, so one a month is a good way of rationing it. The level of craft in the art is something not often seen in comics, let alone manga. It's beautiful. The choreography and depiction of the fight scenes is peerless, in my opinion. It is famously unfinished. The author stopped working on it because he said he could not continue unless he was sure that he could maintain the level of craft that he was applying to this work, which he was finding very difficult after, I think, about 10, 15 years of creating it. Even though it's unfinished, it's still really worth reading. Maybe he will finish it at some point, but regardless of that, it's an absolute masterpiece, a work of art, an essential read. And I think aside from being a work of manga, it is just one of the all-time greatest comics, especially with the art and the choreography and the fight scenes. Really, really recommend Vagabond. It's also published now in like extra large hardcover editions, which are a lot more pricey, but really nice if you're into your art.
Are they still selling these Vizbigs?
Yes. It's being published in larger hardcovers, but they're still available in these paperback editions, which are, how much are they? They're about £20 each.
Because I had the older versions, and then I
Yes.
just rebought on the Vizbigs.
Right.
Because they are better. I prefer reading them like that.
Yeah, they're a good size.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about horror manga. And starting with a book that needs little introduction, I think. It's pretty well known at this point. And this was my gateway drug into manga. Uzumaki by Junji Ito. This is the story of a town being taken over by the concept of spirals. It's very, very weird. The art is fantastic. A lot of these images you'll know. Junji Ito's even just a lot of single images from this are very well known now. It starts off like a series of kind of vignettes, and he ties it together into a larger story. Let me try and get
It's also an anime. They've actually done a new version.
They made an anime. Apparently, only the first episode is good, and then they rushed it.
Yeah, supposedly. And I thought there was a TV series as well by Takashi Miike or something.
Was there? There was a live action thing of it as well, wasn't there?
If it wasn't by him, it had.
We go. Here's the. Also, Junji Ito is the master of the horrific page turn. I think there's a lot of short story collections of his as well. Like I think the first one I read by Junji Ito was called Fragments of Horror, and there's a story in there called The Red Turtleneck that I made the great mistake of reading on my own at 2:00 at night. Scared the bejesus out of me. I did not sleep well. So I think Junji Ito, if you're into horror and you haven't read manga, Junji Ito is a great place to start. And like I say, this kind of sent me down the manga rabbit hole once I'd read a few Ito books. But in terms of manga horror, I think Ito is a good intro, but he doesn't even come close with just how absolutely terrifying manga horror can be. For me, the one that really scared the bejesus out of me is PTSD Radio, which is collected in there's only 3 volumes of it, and it starts off where at the beginning it's like a radio dial is being turned, and you get like a very brief little short story, and then the dial keeps being turned and you get another little story and another and another. There's all these very, very short stories that start to slowly tie in together and form a larger narrative. Absolutely beautiful artwork. Lovely Japanese horror trope as well. Like anyone with long hair covering their face is scary. It draws a lot from folk superstition and a lot of classic Japanese horror tales. And I love the format, the way it keeps jumping between these different stories and they're all kind of connecting together into a larger narrative, but it doesn't, there's very little hand holding, very little is explicitly explained to you. And as a result, it leaves so much up to your imagination that it really starts to freak you out. And I must say, there's a whole section of the 3rd book that I skipped. I didn't read it, and I don't think I ever will. This book, and people say it's a spoiler by even if you say there's a twist, but I'm sorry, slight spoiler warning. There's a kind of 4th wall breaking twist towards the end of this story that absolutely freaked me out. And yeah, there's a whole section of this I haven't read and I'm never going to read. But I still recommend it. If you feel like you have a high threshold for horror, like I do, this will test that limit. It's absolutely brilliant. And very underrated. I think it's not as widely spoken about as it should be. It's really a masterpiece of horror comics.
I've never read that or heard of it, and now all I want to do is read that section.
You do trust. If you read through it and get to that bit, it's 50-50 whether you'll actually read it or not. The way they set it up, like it's wah.
So if you have read this and you have got to that bit, please no spoilers, but just comment that you've read that bit and say if it really is as scary as...
and also, if you have any recommendations for adult beginners for manga, please mention that in the comments. I keep forgetting to say that in videos. Please post your recommendations as well. I'm always looking for more recommendations too. And one final... I could go on about manga horror all day, but I've tried to narrow it down. One final item for manga horror is Gutanabe's adaptations of H.P. Lovecraft stories. This is his adaptation of The Mountains of Madness, which is the only work of his available in this size. Unfortunately, they should publish all of them in this size. I think the artwork is beautiful. Look, it's got these lovely silver pages as well. So Tanabe has this niche where he adapts H.P. Lovecraft stories, but also expands them and makes them way more accessible, way more readable. I think Tanabe and Lovecraft is a match made in heaven. These are such great adaptations, and I think his art style and his sense of space and pacing really, really suits the storytelling. Absolutely brilliant. There's a trace of the old EC Comics horror stories from the 50s in the way he paces them and the way he draws them out. Absolutely beautiful art. Just stunning. And I think this is a great example of how manga pushes purely visual storytelling in a way that Western comics haven't really caught up to. I don't want to spoil too much, but there's some really beautiful and intricate and shocking imagery in this. I think Mountains of Madness is really worth reading. It's available in 2 smaller paperback editions or this larger hardcover. The larger hardcover works out cheaper than buying the 2 paperbacks, and it's much nicer reading it in this large format. So I think it's about £40, £45. I really recommend reading it in this format. It's a beautiful art book as well. And my other favourite, and I wish they would publish this in the larger edition, is his adaptation of The Shadow over Innsmouth,
which is one of my all-time favourite
stories. The pacing and the tension in his adaptation here is absolutely masterful. I think it cannot be... What's the word? It cannot be underestimated how difficult it is to make reading a comic a tense and scary experience. Like with film, you have the editing, the composition, the lighting, the sound. With comics, all you have is the pages and turning of pages.
And I'd say with novels, you have your imagination more as well.
Yeah.
So you can get scared reading a novel because it's the spark to your own imagination, to your own head.
Yeah.
As opposed to this, it's showing you the stuff.
Yeah.
Which is not as triggering in some ways.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because especially there's a sequence in here that I don't want to spoil, but where it's like there's something or someone behind the door. And the way he plays with the tension of not knowing what's behind the door and whether it's going to get through the door or not is one of the greatest moments in comics I've had in recent memory. It's absolutely brilliant. If I was going to recommend just one Gutanabe book, it would be this one. It's Shadow over Innsmouth. It's absolutely perfect.
Okay, I might have to end up getting that. The only... Sorry to interrupt, Tom. I might even cut this out, but the only horror comic that I've read that's actually disturbed me, funnily enough, is a riff on H.P. Lovecraft. It's Alan Moore's Providence, and there's
there
are moments in that
it's terrifying.
Really disturb me.
Providence is very disturbing,
and again, it's H.P. Lovecraft, horrible man, brilliant writer.
Okay, and the last little bit I want to recommend, we're going to look at sci-fi. And I think the only place we could start would be Akira.
Most people's gateway into anime.
Yes.
Was mine.
There's a very famous film of this and an equally famous manga that's available in various different formats. This one is from there's a box set that collects it in 6 lovely hardcovers. So nice. these are now being published in paperbacks as well, and I recommend the newer paperbacks of it, which are printed in the original Japanese orientation with the original Japanese sound effects, not the Western sound effects. That's the way to read it, in my opinion. What can be said about Akira that you may not already know? It is a superhuman feat of cartooning, beyond a doubt. It's simultaneously there's an epicness to it and an intimacy between the characters that is really. It's funny. It's so elegantly told that on first reading it can appear quite shallow, but I think that's just because the whole work is just so solid and tightly put together that those themes just kind of pass you by under the surface of it quite easily, but on further reflection it's an incredibly deep story. Especially as well, people who think there are very negative stereotypes of women in a manga, haven't read Akira, because most of the female characters are way smarter, way stronger, and way more sensible than all of the male characters, who are basically idiots who generally cause everyone to die. Just an absolutely brilliant piece of cartooning. If you, on the off chance that you don't know anything about Akira, I don't want to show you too much or spoil any of it.
And if you only know the anime, that was the first book.
Right,
correct?
So there's an interesting thing with Akira, is that when he was halfway through making the manga, they made the film of it. And then after the film was made, he then finished the manga. So the film was released before the comic book of it was completed. So what's interesting is when he made the anime, then he had time to refine the beginning of the story because he'd had one go at it in the manga. Whereas when he made the ending of the manga, he then had time to refine the ending because he'd made the ending in the film. So you have a weird situation where the beginning of the manga is a little messy compared to the film, but the end of the manga is way more solid and rewarding than the film.
Well, he was famously, he redrew a bunch of the film. So a lot of the film frames he drew because he didn't like the way the animators were drawing it.
Yeah.
So he had to take over. And it was so exhausting, he said he'll never make the entire thing as an anime.
Yeah.
Because
he was absolutely
destroyed him.
The obsessive level of detail in this. I think the only thing I can compare it to in the West is like Kubrick's 2001. Like this is the 2001 of manga. Like the level of detail and obsessive craft in this is absolutely staggering.
Yeah.
And it is not bingeable. I do recommend get the paperback edition if you want to splurge and get the box set, which also contains a really lovely art book. I really recommend that. You can, I think it's about £180 for the full set. You can, let me get it. Hang on. You can get it online if you look carefully. You can get it for about half the price. So, here's the box set, which is beautiful. And here's the art book it comes with that has it has all the covers from when it was published in magazine format. It's got a lot of the colour artwork, a lot of character studies, a lot of publicity material, a lot of sketches. Beautiful. But Akira is an essential read, whether you get it in paperback or hardcover. It's well worth the investment.
And you got a little patch there.
And it comes with a little patch as well. So that's Akira. Bit more sci-fi for you. Oh, it's heavy. Blame. Or Blam. People call it Blam. I say blame because it's got an E on the end, and that word is blame. But apparently it's pronounced Blam. Say it any way you want.
It's got to be blame. Why would you have an... Otherwise it would just be... it wouldn't have the E.
I feel like, for me, blame is a more appropriate title because, for me, this story is about... It's far, far, far in the future. There's humans. There's machines. There's human machines, there's machine humans, and no one knows why they're in the situation they're in or how it ever started. So who do you blame? You see how I did that?
There, yeah.
So Tsutomu Nihei, before he became a manga artist, was an architect. And Blame is known for having this incredible sense of scale where we're exploring this giant kind of mega structure, massively influential, mostly silent. There's not a lot of dialogue, some incredible action, some incredible artwork. Manga generally doesn't hold your hand when it's telling you a story. That's something I really appreciate with Japanese storytelling over Western storytelling, is they assume a certain level of intelligence in the reader. They don't explain everything to you, and Blame is absolutely mystifying. For me, that it's collected in these 7 volumes from Vertical Press again. Really, really worth it. A beautiful work of art. For me, as I went through the volumes, the more I read of it, the less I understood about what was going on, but the more I was enjoying it. It's, wow, some of the artwork is... I think I'm going to make a massively overconfident statement. This is some of the best sci-fi architecture since Blade Runner. It's really on another level, and it's very, very unique. Again, I don't want to explain too much of the story, partly because it's very hard to explain the story, and there's a million different fan theories, a lot of like YouTube deep dives and whole web forums devoted to trying to decipher the plot of this manga. I feel like I'm making this a hard recommendation, but I think it's just the art and the sense of space and this idea that far, far, far in the future there will be machines and things that have been set in motion that there is no record of how they began, and everyone is dealing with the fallout from this event. But no one knows, no one is alive, and there's no surviving information about what it was that caused this to be. Absolutely beautiful work of sci-fi. There's an anime movie of this, which in my opinion is absolutely terrible and should be avoided. But Blame itself is something, if you like sci-fi... I personally, I like this more than Akira, actually. This is my number 1 sci-fi manga. And finally, last book I want to recommend. This is my very old beat-up copy. It's collected in 2 volumes. That's Planetes by Makoto Yukimura. This is not just a great sci-fi, but I think a really good example of what's known in manga as the slice of life genre. It's about astronauts in space in the near future, but it mainly focuses on the interpersonal relationships and just the daily life of these characters. It's been republished now in hardcover by Dark Horse. You can still get these paperbacks online reasonably cheaply. I think if you if you're into kind of more cerebral, more kind of interpersonal sci-fi, this is a great read. Really highly recommend it. And that brings our recommendations to a close. I think that's a good... I feel like I've made a good bunch of recommendations for some different genres.
Yeah.
You can catch me in real life at Stroud Green Market every Sunday from 10 till 2:30. I'm also at the All Good Bookshop, 35 Turnpike Lane, which is a wonderful cooperative bookshop. I curate the graphic novel section there. We have a permanent section of books there. Please like, subscribe, and if you have any manga recommendations of your own, or if you started your manga journey as an adult, please let us know in the comments. Tell us what you liked, what you didn't, what recommendations you think I missed out on, and see you next time. Say bye, Tom.
Bye, Tom.